That Saturday started like any other weekend for me. I slept in a bit longer than usual and leaned over to give my wife of 17 years a good morning kiss. She mumbled, "Jameson, give me a break. I barely get any peace from you morning or night. And no doubt, the girls are already up and about." I just chuckled. Fair point. They're old enough to manage on their own. They won't come barging in on us. With that, I slipped out of bed, threw on my robe, and headed toward the shower. On the way, I caught some noise from Sarah's room, sounding like Lily was trying to drag her sister out of bed. I figured I'd let them sort it out. After I showered and got dressed, I went to the kitchen, where both my daughters were already at the table, looking slightly impatient. Sarah looked up and asked, "Are we having breakfast anytime soon? We still have school, you know?" I had to laugh. "Girls, it's New Year's break. You're headed to Grandma's. School's the last thing you need to worry about." Sarah looked confused. "Wait, you're on break too, right? It's a long weekend. Mom planned it." I shrugged. "Well then, make your own breakfast for once." Lily jumped in. "We would, but Mom's convinced we'll destroy the kitchen. The most she lets us make is scrambled eggs." I suggested, "How about some oatmeal or semolina porridge like the English do?" Sarah grinned. "Oatmeal, please, chef." I chuckled. "Oatmeal it is, ma'am, but make sure there's no lumps in the porridge. Now go wash up. Breakfast will be ready in 15 minutes. I got to work on breakfast for the girls, and soon enough, Ella came out of the bedroom, looking fresh and polished. She was wearing one of my old shirts, and I'll admit, she still had a way of catching my eye. Even with everything brewing between us, I couldn't deny her beauty. She sat down at the table and told the girls, "Finish up. Get ready. Daddy's taking you to Grandma's today." Sarah's face fell. "But, Mom, you said we'd go to the ski resort. We already packed for it." Ella brushed it off. "Girls, life doesn't always go our way. We'll hit the ski slopes over spring break when the snow's melted, or maybe we'll go to Palmer where there's snow year-round. Now finish breakfast and get ready." Sending the kids to my mother-in-law's place wasn't something I looked forward to, especially after Ella's bait and switch with our trip plans. I had noticed her pulling away from me ever since David, her company's new commercial director, started popping up in her life. Ella had known him from college, yet somehow never saw fit to mention him to me. It left me uneasy, but I clung to the hope she'd stay loyal. Confronting David felt pointless and would only create more tension, but I kept a close watch on things. So far, it had only been a bit of harmless flirting, at least to my knowledge. But her insistence on sending the kids away for New Year's practically screamed that something was planned for this weekend. I was prepared for whatever would come, even slipping a recorder into my pocket just to be sure. My focus was on protecting my daughters, thanks to a heads-up from Mia, a mutual friend who had warned me. Ella had no clue that I had already turned on the recorder, hiding it neatly before heading back to the kitchen. She sat silently for a moment, then looked over at me, giving a small, fading smile before saying in a serious tone, "Jameson, we need to talk." Her tone told me instantly that I wasn't going to like what was coming. I kept my voice steady. "What's going on?" She sighed. "Jameson, nothing's wrong, really. I love you, you know? I always have. You've been a good husband, a great father, and I want to spend my life with you. Maybe even die beside you someday. So, what's stopping us?" I asked, trying to keep it light. She continued, "Lately, I've been doing a lot of soul-searching, and I think maybe we need a little time apart. It's only a break, just some space to figure out our own paths for a while. That way, we can come back together stronger and more connected." "How long are we talking here?" I pressed. "A month? A year? Just a couple of weeks over the holiday," she replied casually. "Is that why you sent the girls to your mom's instead of the ski resort?" I asked, piecing it together. She nodded. "Yes, I already arranged everything with her." "So what? You and your boyfriend cooked up this philosophical experiment to get my okay for a weekend fling." I could barely believe the words were coming out of my mouth, but the audacity of her suggestion had my blood boiling. Ella just looked at me with a calm face, pretending not to understand. "Jameson, I have no idea what you're insinuating. Yes, this might be hard for you, but I promise it'll all be the same between us after this. When I come back, I'll do everything to make you happy again. Maybe this sounds selfish, but it's for a good reason. I want to grow old with you. Maybe one day you'll even thank me for this. My patience was running out. You really have no clue who I'm talking about? It's David, your new director. The guy you had a wild fling with in college until he dumped you, and then you latched onto me. And I had no idea he'd end up as your boss. If you think nothing's changing, you're wrong. Her face twisted, trying to act like she didn't know what I meant. What are you getting at? She asked, pretending to be clueless. I couldn't hold back any longer. Your attitude towards me, towards the girls, it's all different now. It's like you're already halfway out the door. Ella stayed calm, with a hint of frustration in her voice. Jameson, I still love you, and you're making this into something it's not. I don't know how you plan to explain things if we separate. What will Sarah and Lily think? And your parents? I sighed, steadying myself. We're not getting divorced, Ella. But don't think I'm blind to this sociological theory you and David cooked up. She rolled her eyes, but I could see the hint of a smirk. You're making this too complicated, Jameson. You'll drop the girls off, and when you get back, we can work this out, Ella said, attempting to keep control over the situation. I shook my head, my voice firm. There's nothing left to work out. I'm leaving. Her voice trembled as she protested. You can't do this to me. Oh, I can and I will, I replied, resolved. I didn't plan on this, but now the decision's made. I'm filing for divorce. She tried to reason. But I already said I'd call it all off. Yeah, you said that. And then you suggested we'd talk it over when I got back. Sure, go enjoy your weekend while I drive the girls around. Maybe you and David can come up with more theories. I snapped, the bitterness spilling over. Just then, Sarah entered the kitchen, cutting through the tense silence. Dad, we're ready to go. I'll be down in 5 minutes, I told her, quickly grabbing a few things. My laptop, my backpack, and a change of clothes. Without another look at Ella, I headed downstairs, started the car, and waited for the engine to warm up. The girls hopped in, and as we pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Ella watching from the window, looking startled and uncertain. The car was quiet as we merged onto the main road. Eventually, Sarah spoke up. Dad, Grandma lives the other way. I know, sweetheart, I replied calmly. But I figured since you were promised a ski trip, that's exactly where we're heading now. We'll sort out a place to stay when we get there. After a few beats, Sarah's voice came again, softer this time. Dad, are you and Mom getting a divorce? Trying to stay composed, I asked, Why do you ask that? She hesitated. We heard you two arguing in the kitchen earlier. We're on your side, aren't we, Lily? Sarah turned to her sister. Yeah, I'm with Dad, Lily added. But where will we live? For now, we'll stay at Grandma's. I'll take you to school to grab some books and clothes. Let's try not to worry right now and enjoy the vacation. You both deserve it. Meanwhile, back at the house, Ella watched us leave. As soon as we were out of sight, she pulled out her phone and dialed David, who answered immediately. David, it's me. We've got a problem, she said quietly. Don't worry, I'm alone. Is Jameson gone already? He asked. Yes, but he didn't react the way we thought. He didn't buy my explanation at all, she admitted, sounding shaken. Who are we talking about here? He asked, already knowing the answer. My husband, she replied, irritation seeping into her voice. I pitched the 2-week separation idea, just like we discussed. And he went along with it? David asked. Ella sighed. Not exactly. He knows about our past. He brought up college, our connection. He's threatening to divorce me. David's tone shifted, clearly worried. That's a problem. This could blow up in a big way if word gets around, especially at work. Mia will catch wind of it in no time. Ella's frustration boiled over. You've never been all in on this, have you? So what do I do now? David was silent for a moment. Is Jameson back yet? No, he still has to drop the girls off and return. He might come back or he might not, she replied, her voice tense. Tell him you've called off the separation completely, David suggested. Play it down. Let him cool off. We can't let this get out and become a workplace issue. I tried that already. He didn't believe me. He thought I'd try to manipulate him when he came back, she confessed. When will he return? David asked. It'll take him about 3 or 4 hours, Ella replied. Then that's the plan. When he gets back, let him know the separation is off, no ambiguity. Just keep it low until he calms down. Ella ended the call, feeling slightly more reassured with David's advice. She set the table, decided against cooking, and went out to pick up some takeout. She also grabbed a bottle of wine, placing it on the table with 2 glasses and a corkscrew. After warming up a few appetizers, she switched on the TV and settled into the armchair, contemplating the mess she was in. The fling had seemed so harmless at first. A brief spark from her past reignited. But now, the cost felt a lot higher than she'd ever imagined. Her thoughts drifted back to the day she found out David would be her new boss. There'd been a thrill at seeing him again, that undeniable pull. It had started as just a small thrill, nothing more. David had made it clear too. Ella, you know I'm drawn to you, but I'm not about to destroy my family over this. I'm not cutting contact, but it has to stay between us. And you're married too, last I checked. In hindsight, she could see how careless she'd been, how the little secrets had spiraled. For hours passed, and Jameson still hadn't returned. He should have been back by now. Growing anxious, Ella called her mom. Hi, honey. How's everything? It's getting dark so early these days. I'm here with your dad, having our usual winter debate, her mom said, chuckling. What are you two disagreeing about now? Ella asked. Oh, you know him. He wanted a drink, I said no. But he found the bottle anyway. What about you? When are you bringing the girls over? Ella's stomach sank. It was clear from her mom's response that Jameson hadn't shown up. After hanging up, she dialed Jameson's parents. Her father-in-law picked up, his voice stern. Ella, what's going on? Looking for Jameson and the girls, right? He already told us about everything. Ella hesitated. Yes, I just wanted to check in. See how everyone's doing. Don't play dumb, Ella. Jameson called and said you two were getting a divorce. That's ridiculous. We had a disagreement, but we're not ending our marriage over it, she argued, scrambling to maintain control. It's not just a disagreement, and you know it. He told me all about this guy from your office, he replied, his tone icy. Jameson mentioned that you suggested some trial separation this morning. When he refused, you backed down but said you'd bring it up later. Is that what happened? No, it's not like that. Her father-in-law continued. Ella, Jameson's done. He's made up his mind about divorce. He took the girls to keep them safe from all this. He even told us you'd be at home, probably waiting for him. Ella felt a wave of desperation. That's just not true. He doesn't understand. He knows enough, Ella. Jameson knows about the man in your life. I suggested he drive up there to sort it out with you face to face. But he told me, Dad, I don't need to. I've already made my choice. I have 2 daughters and they're on my side. I told my father-in-law. Do you have any idea where he went? Ella asked, her voice laced with desperation. We were so upset we didn't even think to ask, he replied, sounding drained. If he calls, let him know he misunderstood. Everything I did, I thought I was doing for our family, but now I see where I went wrong. She tried to explain, her voice softer now. My father's tone grew stern. Ella, my wife and I have been together for decades, and even in our worst days, separation never crossed our minds. Who got you tangled up in these ridiculous ideas? If there's someone else, why keep up this charade? If you're ready for another man, then leave Jameson and the girls in peace. Jameson will move on, and believe me, he'll be just fine. He's still young, he's not unattractive, and the girls would be better off with him than living in this mess. Ella's voice broke. There will be no divorce. He sighed. That's what you say, but I know my son. Seems you don't know him at all. Ella sounded almost desperate. I just need to talk to him, clear everything up. He'll realize it was all a mistake. He'll call and I'll explain. She hung up and immediately dialed David. To her surprise, a woman's voice answered. Hello. Ella stammered. I'm looking for David. Is he there? The woman sounded unimpressed. Who are you? My name is Ella. I work with him, she said, uncertain. Oh, I know who you are. Listen, I kicked him out. Don't bother calling again. He doesn't have this number anymore. Ella's voice quivered. What happened? You don't know? This man dragged me across 2 cities with his cheating and lies. I'm done with him. I'm not moving again. Ella felt a chill. Do you know where he is? The woman laughed bitterly. No clue. Maybe he's headed to your place. Why don't you check? Ella shook her head, barely able to process. He doesn't know where I live. He wouldn't just show up. Trust me, he knows plenty. Your address, your routine, everything. But don't worry, he's not as devoted as you think. He had plans to meet half the office while I was on vacation. Meanwhile, I was on the road with my daughters, heading toward a ski lodge outside of town. I knew a few folks there, including Jonathan, an old friend from college who now ran the place. I gave him a call, explained the situation, and asked if he could put us up for a few days. Jameson, anything for you. A cozy cabin for 3 sounds just about perfect. I've got a couple open, and I'll hold one for you. Thanks, Jonathan. I have one small favor, though. If anyone calls, don't confirm that I'm here with the girls. Got it. The cabin will be ready. How far out are you? We're about an hour and a half away. Roads are slick, so I'm taking it slow. Understood. I'll set things up for your arrival. Just mention my name at the gate, and they'll guide you in. An hour and a half later, we arrived at the lodge. The gatekeeper pointed us to the parking area, where I parked, grabbed our things, and led the girls inside. Jonathan was waiting, table set and ready. Come on, everything's getting cold, he said with his usual impatience. Hold on, Jonathan, I chuckled. The girls just got here. Let them settle in, wash up, and have a look around. Sarah and Lily went upstairs, already wearing tracksuits and exploring the cabin. I couldn't help noticing how fast they were growing up. So, where's Ella? Why isn't she here? Jonathan asked, picking up on the tension. That's a long story. I'll fill you in later. For now, let's have a drink and catch up, I said, raising my glass. You're in no rush, are you? Jonathan joked. We toasted, reminiscing about old times, with the occasional interruption from the girls' questions. At one point, Lily asked if there was anything else going on at the ski lodge. As a matter of fact, there's a dance in the main hall tonight, Jonathan mentioned. Lily looked at me with excitement. We didn't bring any fancy clothes. Jonathan waved it off. Don't worry about it, no dress code. Just come as you are. Sarah piped up. Can we go, Dad? Of course. Jonathan will have someone show you the way. A few minutes later, an employee arrived to escort the girls to the dance. As soon as they left, Jonathan turned to me, his face serious. So, what's going on, Jameson? Why are you talking about divorce? I sighed, feeling the weight of the last few days. Do you remember when I first started seeing Ella? There were rumors about her and another guy. Yeah, I remember. Rumors were all we had, though, nothing solid. Well, fast forward to now, and that guy, David, shows up in our lives again as the new commercial director at Ella's work. They started this emotional back and forth I didn't notice at first. He's married too. His wife, Mia, actually reached out to me and let me in on what was happening. Today, it all came to a head. So, she's been cheating on you? Jonathan asked, stunned. Not physically, no. But they wanted to spend this weekend apart, as some kind of sociological experiment to strengthen our marriage. I've always been skeptical of these psychological theories. Sociology and psychology are convenient for people who can't make sense of the world, drawing conclusions and then calling them research or laws, when they're just opinions dressed up as facts. I said, feeling a surge of frustration. Jonathan nodded. You're not wrong about that. When I spoke to her, it hit me that living with her wasn't something I could do anymore. Divorce is the only option. Jonathan put a hand on my shoulder. What's next? I've got a group of lawyers coming to the lodge tomorrow. They're based nearby, so I'll ask them to help sort this out. He raised his glass again. Well, here's to moving forward. Around 11 p.m., Sarah and Lily returned from the dance, escorted by a staff member who'd seen them safely back. I made a small supper for the girls, and we shared a quiet meal before they headed off to bed. As I sat alone, the day's weight finally hit me. I turned on the recorder I'd hidden earlier and replayed the conversation, letting the painful confirmation settle in. My choice was the only one I could live with. Ella hadn't even tried to reach out to me. She didn't have a clue where I'd taken the girls, and from what I'd gathered, she probably had her own plans set in motion. Ella might have booted up my computer, hoping to find information on where we'd gone, but I'd been careful, deleting any traces. Nothing she did would tell her where we were. The next morning, a knock came at my door, breaking my heavy sleep. "Come in," I called, and in rushed my daughters, all smiles and excitement for the day. "Daddy, wake up!" Sarah and Lily burst in, voices full of excitement. "Let's have breakfast, go skiing, and then hit the ice rink." "They've got one here." I rubbed my eyes, smiling at their enthusiasm. All right. Where do we grab breakfast around here?" "At the cafe," they chimed together. "Go wash up, and I'll be ready in 5 minutes," I replied, getting out of bed and preparing for the day. We headed to the cafe for breakfast and afterward, changed into our ski gear, rented skis, and took the lift up the mountain. The morning flew by as we skied until lunchtime. Later, we returned to the cafe, changed, and ran into Jonathan and his wife, who were just finishing their meal. Jonathan mentioned that the legal team he'd arranged had arrived, including a specialist in family law. "Let's meet in my office this afternoon," he suggested. "I've got everything set up, a computer, printer, the works. And if it's all right with you, I'll take your girls, my wife, and her sister to the ice rink tonight. Then we'll all head back to my place afterward for some dancing and fun. After all, tomorrow's New Year's Eve, so we've got some celebrating to plan for." The arrangements were made, and after lunch, Jonathan and I headed to his office. Not long after, the lawyer, Anna, joined us, and we dove into the details of my situation. She laid out the legal aspects clearly, filling in gaps I hadn't been aware of. At one point, she looked at me seriously and said, "I'd advise against making impulsive decisions regarding the apartment. Think about the future. The girls will grow up, start their own lives, and they'll need stability. If you stay in the apartment now, a new partner on either side might complicate things later on." I sighed. It's hard to picture living in the same apartment as her. Anna nodded thoughtfully. "Consider suggesting a separation of space within the apartment if it comes to that. For now, just inform your wife that you'll be filing for divorce." "How long until the paperwork's ready?" I asked, bracing myself. "No need to rush. The courts are in holiday mode too. I have my laptop and we can prepare the initial papers here. Later, you can decide if you'd like me to represent you formally." "That sounds like the best option," I replied, relieved to have her help. That night, we celebrated New Year's Eve at the ski lodge's large hall. The night was filled with laughter, music, and dancing. My daughters were having a blast, joining in with Jonathan, his wife, her sister, and a group of lawyers who had joined the festivities. By the early hours, we returned to our cabin. Sarah and Lily were exhausted from all the excitement and went straight to bed. After tucking them in, I rejoined the remaining group by the fireplace in my cabin. We sat in comfortable silence, savoring the warmth and quiet before each of us eventually headed to bed. The next few days were a much-needed escape, full of skiing, ice skating, and evenings spent dancing and laughing. One evening, Jonathan pulled me aside. "How are you doing, really?" I managed a small smile. "The days are easy, full of activity and laughter. But some nights, there's a lot of pain. Still, I'm stronger now, more prepared for what's ahead than I was before." The day finally came to pack up and head home. Before leaving, I sat my daughters down, reminding them of the importance of keeping our apartment. We stopped at a mall on the way back for groceries, and by the time we returned home, night had fallen. Sarah and Lily immediately set to work rearranging their rooms, with Lily moving her things into Sarah's room. As they finished up, Ella walked in, suspicion evident on her face. "What exactly are you two doing?" "We're making Lily's room into Dad's room, and we're sharing one," Lily explained matter-of-factly. "Yeah, that's what Dad said," Sarah added, a hint of defiance in her voice. Ella's face twisted with frustration. With their room settled, the girls got ready for school the next day. I busied myself preparing dinner and breakfast for the morning, ignoring Ella's attempts to initiate a conversation. At one point, she confronted me in the kitchen, trying to lay down her conditions. I said, "I won't tolerate you bringing any new friends into the house. Go wherever you want, but understand that I'm filing for divorce." She went into the girls' room, asking if they wanted to talk. The girls barely looked at her. "We didn't miss you," Sarah said bluntly. "Dad asked us to stay out of his way this week." Ella's face fell, but I remained stoic. The girls and I lived separately from her in the house, keeping our doors locked. I cooked our meals and shared none of it with her. On Friday evening, a young woman arrived with a registered letter for Ella. She opened it, revealing a summons with a statement of claim. Her face crumbled, and she rushed into the kitchen, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Jameson, why do you want a divorce?" "I thought we could work things out," she pleaded. Without looking at her, I replied coldly, "Take it up with a lawyer. They can walk you through it." Desperate, she brought up David's disappearance, thinking it might change my mind. "Maybe you should try him for support," I said, unmoved. "I have no one," she choked, but I stayed silent. The girls had already eaten and retreated to their room without even glancing in her direction. Ella continued to plead, insisting that she still loved me and our daughters. But my decision was final, the path forward clearer than ever. "What does love have to do with this now?" I shot back, my voice barely containing the anger. "I did love you once, but that was before I found out about your affair with David, someone you never even mentioned. Loving you would only make me a fool. You wanted to talk? Fine, go ahead. Tell me about this weekend you had planned. What exactly did you two cook up? I haven't heard your grand sociological theories lately, so enlighten me. Did you and your buddy have fun? Glad he vanished on you. Now tell me all about it." I turned away, finished dinner, and began clearing the table. Sarah entered, noticing my expression, and offered to help. I gently declined. "Just go upstairs and tidy your room. I'll handle the dishes and take care of ironing. Your clothes are dry." Ella, realizing I wasn't going to engage with her, retreated to her room, visibly defeated. After washing the dishes and turning off the lights, I went to my room, where a pile of laundry waited to be ironed. Before bed, I stepped into the kitchen one last time and found Ella sitting alone in the dark, waiting. As soon as she saw me, she started talking. "Jameson, none of this was intentional. I knew David back in college. He just disappeared out of nowhere. Only a few people even knew we'd been involved. Years later, he showed up at work, and at first it was just lunches, harmless conversations. But then he made it clear he didn't want anything suspicious. Everything had to be carefully hidden so neither of our spouses would find out. I agreed, thinking it was a harmless fling, nothing more. This separation was supposed to be our one and only date. So you came up with this whole story to justify sneaking around?" I said, barely concealing my disgust. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought David was genuine." "Genuine?" I scoffed. "He was using you, plain and simple. How could you be so naive?" Her voice softened, trying to shift the blame. "Jameson, it's been so long since you've complimented me on my looks, my clothes, anything about me." I shook my head. "Don't even try to put this on me. Just because I didn't compliment you every day doesn't give you a free pass to have an affair. Are you saying that any man who throws a few kind words your way is fair game?" I asked, barely containing my frustration. In the following days, I focused on preparing for a meeting with child welfare. My lawyer, Anna, had emphasized that their evaluation would carry significant weight in court, though the girls' own views would be equally important. My days were full, and at night, sleep didn't come easily. Lying awake, I found myself grappling with the painful themes of love, betrayal, and trust. Ella's disloyalty had left a mark I couldn't ignore. I knew a divorce was the only path forward, though I understood it wouldn't be simple. Our children had also distanced themselves from Ella, and it weighed on me to consider how all of this would affect them. One night, Ella tried to argue that, for the sake of the kids, we should attempt to salvage our marriage. I replied firmly, "Our children need to know they're loved unconditionally by both parents. They didn't cause this, and they're old enough to form their own opinions. And don't think I've poisoned their minds against you. They made their judgments on their own, based on what they overheard the day you proposed that weekend break." I continued, "I'm proud of them for how they handled it. They saw what was going on between you and David, and they made their decisions without my influence. When we left, they were hurt and angry, and that changed everything for me. The girls understand more than you think." Ella's face was pale. "Do you think the girls hate me?" I let out a bitter laugh. "For a sociologist, you seem pretty clueless about people. Yes, they know you betrayed their father, and yes, they're angry. You might try to rebuild with them, but remember, they're at a stage where they're transitioning into adulthood. With all the changes they're going through, who knows if you'll ever connect with them again." The days leading up to the court date were filled with her pleas and attempts to reconcile. When we finally stood in the courtroom for a preliminary hearing, the judge offered us a brief period to try to resolve our issues. When that court-mandated reconciliation period expired, I proposed that Ella sign a custody agreement allowing the girls to live with me. Ella was defiant. "I'm not signing any custody agreement," she said flatly. "Then I'll take this to court," I replied, my patience fraying. "The court will consider my request, hear from the girls, and likely decide in my favor." "You can't be certain of that. Courts make mistakes and I can appeal," she fired back. "Good luck with that," I said, my tone icy. She continued pleading, "Jameson, I know I messed up. I was wrong and I see that now. I promise, I'll never see David again." I gave a hollow laugh. "So, you're trading him for someone else? That's your choice, not mine. You're the one with the sociological theories, remember? I've got enough on my plate without listening to more excuses. If you ever decide to sign the agreement, we'll do it in front of a notary." As the court's reconciliation period drew to a close, Ella made last-ditch efforts to mend things with the girls, but they kept their distance. After school, they joined me in my room to study, barely acknowledging their mother. I prepared our meals and our lives continued, with Ella a distant figure in the background. One afternoon, child welfare officials came by. They spoke with Sarah and Lily, checked out their rooms, and took careful notes. When our court date arrived, we showed up on time with my lawyer, while Ella came alone, having sought advice from counseling and a few divorced friends. She answered the judge's questions briefly, with only yes or no responses, and seemed resigned to the outcome. Near the trial's end, Ella declared she was signing over her share of the apartment to our daughters and provided the deed of gift. The judge noted that she had already removed her belongings, with plans to clear out the rest within a week. She also requested a recess to sign the child support agreement I had proposed, adding, "I'm willing to voluntarily pay child support to Jameson. I understand the court might not rule in my favor. To ensure the funds went directly to our daughters, I suggested she should open separate accounts for each of the girls and deposit support payments there. They'll need the funds as they get older." The judge clarified that the court wasn't addressing alimony or property division that day. Those would be considered later. After a brief recess, we returned to the courtroom, where the judge finalized our divorce. Ella and I walked out of the courthouse, now legally separated. Outside, I spotted the girls at a nearby bench, sharing an ice cream despite the cold. I called out, laughing, "Girls, what are you doing? It's freezing out here." They shrugged. "Ice cream's good in winter too, you know. It's even good for a sore throat," they joked. Amused, I asked, "And why did you pick 19 as the age for your account funds?" "That's just what we decided," they replied with a grin. True to her word, Ella moved out and settled with her parents to help care for her ailing mother. I agreed she could visit the girls once a week, though Sarah and Lily were reluctant. On those visits, she spent time with them at our place and I gave them space. In the months that followed, I spent a lot of time alone, gradually healing. When New Year's Eve came around, I took my daughters back to the ski resort. Jonathan's wife's sister, Florence, joined us, and a tentative relationship began to form between us, though I didn't rush into anything serious. My priority remained on my daughters, ensuring they felt loved and secure. Florence didn't have children of her own, but she bonded with Sarah and Lily. Though they showed a bit of jealousy at first, they eventually accepted her presence. Ella and I maintained a respectful distance. I allowed her visitation rights and kept things civil, but we were neither friends nor partners. Sarah and Lily grew up strong and resilient, adjusting well to life's changes. Florence's presence became a welcome addition to our family, bringing warmth and stability. The year was particularly hard on Ella, though. Her parents both passed away, and while I helped arrange the funerals, there was no reunion between us. Ella carried on, living alone and focusing on her daughters. Eventually, she began dating a widower from her neighborhood. David, her old flame, was long gone, his whereabouts a mystery, even to his ex-wife Mia, who had remarried shortly after their own split. Through it all, my focus remained on creating a stable, loving home for my daughters, building a new life that gave us all the chance to heal and move forward.